Okay, I did it. All right. Uh, First of all, I'm Anton A. Booth. For those who aren't aware of who I am am one of the people who is on the team that helps to manage the club, learning about stamps online, or LASO. We're here tonight for our fourth meeting. We meet every third Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're very excited about our program tonight. Let me just give you a couple quick details. If everybody could mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. Now, if you forget to mute yourself, I can mute you, but I always feel like a dictator when I go in and start putting mute on everybody. So I won't do that unless I see you're not muted. So if you could mute yourself, I'd appreciate it.
I don't think I should mute myself.
No, but Alan, gosh, good point. I should have been more clear about that, Alan. In any case, let me mention one thing. If we have an outage of some sort and things get cut off, give it a couple minutes and try logging on again, because if we have an outage, I will try to bring it right back up. If we can't, we can't, but we have never had a problem, but hopefully if we do have a problem, we can fix it quickly. Tonight we have a presentation. Alan Barasch is going to talk to us about the story of bread, stamps related to bread. And let me just give you a little background about Alan. Alan has been an APS member for 55 plus years. He's been involved as a leader in local clubs continually since 1978 and is currently secretary of the Webster Grove Stamp Club and the St. Louis Bears Exhibitors Group in Missouri. On the national level, Alan is on the board of governors of the Collectors Club of New York and their webmaster. He's also secretary treasurer for the gastronomy on stamp study unit. I guess that's where the bread comes from. Is that it, Alan?
Yes.
Yeah, I figured. And the APS writers unit. He has been the USA representative for the Falkland Islands Philatelic Study Group for several years. Alan frequently speaks to his local clubs and is also presented at the Collectors Club of New York and the American Topical Association. Retired now, Alan was in technical writing and technology development for over 50 years. And let me say one personal thing. Alan was with us at the beginning and helped put this club together. He's been a real resource, particularly, by the way, with the webpage, apart from just his knowledge of stamp collecting and some of the intricacies of the hobby. So just really appreciate the fact that he was willing to do a program for us, and thank him for all the hard work he's put in for us so far. All right. Alan, do you want to share your screen when we get started? You're on.
I'm ready.
All right. Locked and loaded.
Share. Share. Okay. So we're going to talk about what I consider one of the greatest inventions in history, and that is bread. And all of a sudden, I can't go for it. So, bread is a mixture of flour, usually wheat, and water, then baked. It's been a primary building block of cultures for all through history. It ranks right up there with the discovery of making a fire. You make a fire, you decide, hey, I can do stuff with fire, I can bake bread. Bread may be leavened by naturally occurring microbes or chemicals or industrial produced yeast and all kinds of ways, anything that'll make it fluff up. So here are the steps to get to a loaf of bread. We plow the fields. So we have stamps from Iceland with these look like 18th century methods, from Botswana, using a wooden plow from East Germany, plowing the fields. After we plow the fields, we need to sow the seeds. And you'll notice that the posture for sowing seeds is universal, whether it's in Turkey or Somalia or Uruguay or Bavaria, or a painting by Van Gogh from Belgium, from Denmark, from Turkey, from the United States. It's always somebody walking through the fields, throwing the seeds around. And then we grow the grain. So we have the grain growing in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and the Ukraine, Moldavia, Switzerland, and Israel. And here's some sheaves of wheat from Slovenia, from Algeria, Senegal, Iran, Paraguay. Bread is universal and it seems to grow everywhere in the world. And our fields of wheat. United States has issued a number of stamps showing the amber waves of grain. Russia and the UK. After it grows, we need to harvest the grain. So here's harvesting methods from Moldova and Afghanistan, Canada, Rhodesia, Honduras, United States, and Australia. My favorite is this big Canadian stamp with the incredible detail of the horse-drawn harvester. Or maybe they're harvesting by hand with a sickle. And we have a man checking his how the growth is doing in the big field of wheat in Canada, or the young lady in Hungary or Cyprus. The harvester from Canada, World's Grain Exhibition and Conference in 1933, or a harvester in Uzbekistan. After you harvest it, you have to mill the grain into flour. So we have the donkey pulling a millstone from Malta, or giant factories in Ivory Coast and Qatar and St. Vincent. And so here are the basic components of bread. You need flour, which comes from the wheat. You need microbes or whatever to make yeast. You need salt. Salt is a huge industry in a number of countries around the world. And you need water. So the next few slides breaks it down. So this was all the stamps I could find with anything related to yeast. Maybe I was searching for the wrong things, but making microbes in the laboratory, or Ghana's perfection of brewer's yeast, and water. There's lots of stamps with water because of conservation and being sure that people have clean water. So we have the Brazil and Senegal and Greece and Hong Kong and Upper Volta, people from Kenya and Uruguay and something I can't read and I should have labeled it. And salt. And how do you get salt? Well, you can boil the seawater down and the salt is left, or you can rake it up on your beach, as in Anguilla, shown on these two stamps from St. Kitts Nevis and from Anguilla, or you can do it in a fire pit from Papua New Guinea, or salt crystals from Croatia. So then, once we have all the ingredients together, it's time to make some bread. And we see basically home bakers from Netherlands and Belarus and Pakistan, Israel, Macau, and Colombia. I don't think Paddington Bear was actually making bread, but cookies, cakes, everything that uses wheat and water and salt. It's making a form of bread, even if you call it biscuits or whatever. And you combine the ingredients. So here's mom and or the servants mixing the bread. Get your hands down in it. And this one from West Germany, no, East Germany. I think that's a toy baker. I see that little crank there, so I'm thinking it was a wind-up toy of some sort. Or we have commercial bakers from Uruguay, or that sticky label place from Greece, Mexico, and the Bakers Guild in the Czech Republic with a very interesting oven. And more commercial bakers from West Germany and from Switzerland and French Southern and Antarctic territories. And I think that's Chile, Georgia. And I'm not quite sure what they're doing on the stamp from the Grenadines of St. Vincent, but the description I got said they were baking bread. Or lavash from Armenia. It's all bread. After you bake the bread, unless you're just making it for your home, you got to sell it. So we have the bread seller sitting on her stoop in Portugal, or the bread wagon delivering it to the neighborhood in the United States, or this person has a little tent in the market in Jersey. Cute little baker from Chile delivering bread in his baskets, or the baker from Monaco delivering baguettes. I believe the one from Russia is all about getting the bread to the people. So let's build a loaf of bread. We're going to sow the grain in the fields, as we've said. We grow the grain, we harvest the grain, we mill the grain. We combine it, water, salt, yeast. It could also include sugar, butter, egg, honey, spices, whatever you like. So I was talking to my brother that bakes bread every week, and he was telling me, hey, you got to measure it, you got to weigh it, and you got to stay with the formula. And if you had seen me at Gas, I had a loaf of bread that he had baked that I took so everybody could sample at the end. So now we're going to talk about some of the types of bread. And countries around the world love to celebrate their special breads on their stamps. So we have Anzac biscuits from Australia, and these interesting shapes from Argentina, and Armenia, and empanadas from Argentina, or these twisted breads from Croatia, or the fruited breads from Azerbaijan, the Spain with lots of interesting shapes, a fruit bread from Curacao, and it looks like they're making a community naan in Bangladesh, and lots of shapes. So these are all from the Ukraine, whether it's twisted or it's in circles so it's easy to carry, or it's a split bread that's ready to slice open for sandwiches. Or it could be mixed with other things. It could be mixed with molasses, or to make a brown bread, or we've got a looks like a pie from Croatia, a fig bread from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and just lots of interesting shapes from Luxembourg. And more flavors. It could be powdered with sugar. It could be bagels with lots of interesting toppings. It could have nuts. It could have decorations. It could be a cinnamon bread. We have a olive oil cake, which is really a bread from Israel, and bread and coffee from Brazil. And Portugal is real proud of their bread and has put it on a lot of stamps. So, but we have stamps here, bread and wine from Poland, and a bunch of interesting shapes, and filled with cheese or fruit from Portugal. The one up from St. Pierre and Miquelon appears to be a painting, still life with bread and tea. And just the names of a lot of different kinds of bread. Ignore the funny noises coming out of my phone. Pita and naan and tortillas and cornbread and pumpernickel and all of these things, when you get right down to it, is bread. And some more bread shapes, whether it's got little peaks like a crown, or it's been split, or it's a pita, which makes it a lot easier to make a sandwich, or it's got cheese, or it's got garlic, is bread. And whether it's twisted or braided or in a cut to make interesting shapes when it comes out, it's still bread. And it's all bread tastes good. So whether it looks like a pretzel or it looks like an empanada or a pizza, when you get right down to it, it's bread. France just introduced a stamp. I had several, but I traded them in with a stamp dealer. But here is a stamp that scratch and sniff, and it smells like a baguette. United States also did bread and farmers market type stuff, including baguettes, and France did something in 1992 for bread and cereals. And we get the people enjoying their bread. So there is Snoopy and Woodstock getting ready to eat their daily bread, and a young boy from Liechtenstein cutting off a hunk of bread. We hope he's being careful as he pulls that knife towards himself. Or a man from the Central African Republic up there breaking his daily bread. Or the chef just presenting a fancy dinner that we hope includes bread. And then there are bread charities that have been honored on stamps, or mostly on semi-postals. St. Elizabeth donating bread from Austria, 1936. The goddess of fertility distributing bread on a stamp of the Ukraine, and bread for families from Romania. And there have been all the United Nations campaigns to grow food for life. And this particular one at the top, it was different cereal grains from around the world, or people harvesting the grain of the sheaves of wheat. Then there's ceremonial bread, whether it's a loaf or it's the Eucharist or whatever. It's still basically bread, and different things from Easter in the Cayman Islands or Vatican. Or it's the bread that Israelites ate as they escaped from Egypt, even if it's called matzah and it looks like crackers, it's still bread. And then I'll tell you where bread comes from, and it is global. Whether it's tandoor from Asia, or it's pita from the Balkans in the Middle East, or it's pumpernickel or pizza or bagels. It is bread, and it is universal. Do 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 do. Thank you, folks. This is my end. I'll take questions.
Well, before you take questions, Alan, I want to thank you. Honest to goodness, Alan, I'm telling you, before the presentation, I was thinking to myself, what is he going to talk about? I learned more tonight about bread than I think I've ever considered I would have reason to know in my life. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. In any case, who might have a question? You can put it in the chat. I'll do my best to follow it in chat. We have John Day points out, or injera from Ethiopia, I guess is another origin of a bread. But does anyone have a question they would like to raise?
I'd like to make a, can I just say something?
Sure.
No, we know about topical collecting, of course, but I see this presentation as more thematic, which is fantastic, I think.
No, it's wonderful.
No,
Yeah,
I don't try to put a label on it. Whether it's topical or thematic or something. It's mostly information.
Susie has something also.
I just want to jump in here. I was so impressed by, I don't know if it was PowerPoint or Google Slides, but you did such an excellent job in just the actual graphics of the stamps, which I just feel like so many people on online things just kind of do a big fail. But that was riveting, and I just am so impressed. So thank you so much.
Okay.
I build a new presentation almost one a month. So yes, I've had some practice.
And he's a computer guy also. So
yeah, I'd like to echo that. I think it was an interesting presentation. As you said, we learned a lot about bread, but also just from a philatelic point of view, the stylistic decision you made about just having the theme or the topic on that page being the only text. And I thought that was an interesting style choice there, because oftentimes, I don't know, sometimes
there's too much to read.
Too much, yeah. So I thought that was an excellent kind of decision there, and different, because everybody's collection is different. That's when I talk to people outside the hobby, they're always surprised that 10 people's collection of bread on stamps could be completely different, and they're all perfectly wonderful and fine and whatnot. Like, what? I thought there are all these rules.
Mm-hmm. So. Go ahead, Susan. Go ahead, Susan. Susan Schroeder.
Well, I have to admit that I never really noticed how many different stamps had bread on. So what brought this to your attention, if anything?
Well, I'm not really sure how I got started, but I was starting on a new thing, and I saw all those stamps from Portugal with the crazy shapes, and I said, I can make a presentation out of that.
Very clever.
Thank you.
Vera, you're up, Vera. Go ahead.
Sure. I'd like to mention that ATA has a wonderful presentation. I'm pretty sure it's still online for free at the ATA website. And it was about how to present programs like this. And I will say Alan followed many of those rules. That's why his presentation was as good as it was. Also, I'd like to add that Alan is an officer in the gastronomy unit, one of ATA's 50-some study units. I happen to edit their journal. And you too can join for only $5 a year. So if you're interested in any kind of gastronomy or food topic, check it out, gastronomystamps.org.
Sure, you got that in very beautifully. Excellent, excellent. We have a couple things in the
And there's the URL.
hold on.
Hold that up for a second.
I'll keep it there for a few minutes.
Hold on one second. We have two people. I've got to find my chat now because here we go. We have Dennis Schatz asks, what was your process to find all the stamps?
There's a website that I go to, Colnect, COLNECT.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put say, I want to see pictures of stamps that have bread or snails, or I'm working on one right now for another club. I put in the word Illinois and I got a zillion images.
Okay, very good. And then we have a question from Tim Buchholz. No, Bob Finnegan first. I'm going to do these in order, the ones that are online. Did you actually have these stamps among your own collection, or did you search Google Images to add to your PowerPoint?
I don't own but about half of the actual stamps. I went and found the images online.
Okay. And Tim Buchholz asked, do you find liquid bread, in parentheses, beer, on stamps? Now, I got to ask Tim, I'm going to ask Tim to explain that, at least to me.
Yes, beer is on stamps. I used to work for Anheuser-Busch, so yes, I know what ingredients are in there, including barley and rice. And rice is one of the next presentations I'm working on.
Give me 1 second, Vera. We have a couple more questions that went into the chat pod first. One of them is from Christina Tang-Burness. Do you have a particular focus in your own collection of bread stamps, or is just anything you found interesting, or is it just something you found interesting?
It's just something I find interesting, and I talked to several people that I know that make bread all the time, and they said, "Why don't you start doing it?" I said, "Well, I'm not a baker."
Okay,
but I am a stamp guy.
Oh yeah, you're all of that. One more thing before we get to Vera. Gene Wang did put in the chat pod the link to Colnet, and so if anybody wants to look in there, copy that, you'll have it going forward. Vera, go ahead.
Sure. I just wanted to reply to the question about beer. ATA also has a wine on stamps study unit, and they extensively cover the topic of beer in that study unit. So look them up also.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Vera.
And I see Brian has a question about the difference between topical and thematic collecting, and I'm not an exhibitor and don't ever pretend to be, but basically, topical collecting, I really feel that Alan's presentation tonight is probably topical because it has pictures of bread and things that are closely related to bread. Whereas in a thematic collection, you really go in depth and tell a very in-depth story about your topic. And Gene Wang could do a whole lot better job of explaining that than I could.
Yeah, Gene is going to be speaking at our next meeting, if I'm not mistaken. And so, Jean, do you want to say something in response to the Brian's question?
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about next month. But I actually think Brian's or Alan's the collection that he showed today was actually moving into the thematic realm, because he showed, you know, people harvesting and people sewing. So those were all stamps that didn't actually have pictures of bread on them. So if it was a topical collection, it would only be stamps that showed bread. But he's going into, you know, how you make bread, how you enjoy the bread, how you sell the bread. So those are all related storylines. So it's actually becomes thematic.
Yeah. Anybody else? Well, I'll tell you what, while you're thinking, I have a couple observations, if I can go ahead and make them. One of them is I had forgotten something until this meeting tonight, and bread was a huge part of my life as a young person. I lived across the street from my grandmother, who was from Palestine, Middle Eastern. Of course, we all go to the store now buy pita bread, but she made her own pita bread every Sunday morning. And all you had to do was stand outside the house, not in the house, outside the house on the street. You could smell the aroma. And I haven't thought about that for years, Alan. And I thought about it just as you started speaking when I said, well, what's bread have to do with it had a huge part in my life. So thank you for that. The other point I was just going to make is that when Alan made the point early on, you know, bread is history. I mean, you know, bread is universal. It's something we live on. I mean, it's been important, some form of it in every society. I don't know whether Marie Antoinette ever said. In fact, many historians are arguing this was attributed to her incorrectly. Let them eat cake. But the reason this becomes a big story and people consider it a part of history or, you know, fake history, is that bread was it was a staple for the peasants in France and the city dwellers in Paris. And they were going through a period where there was no bread. The world was coming apart. That's what this idea of getting a French baguette. I mean, in those days, that was life or death. And so when they're rioting, and she apparently said, let them eat cake, it was an affront to the sensibility of anybody who knew what it was like not to have a meal every day. And it's just interesting how these things come to mind as you're listening to something you thought would not necessarily create these kinds of connections. So go ahead. Anybody else? Matthew, did you raise your hand, or were you bidding on an item on eBay or something? No, I guess he was just covering his eyes from the light. Okay. Anybody else in name? Go ahead. We have Joseph.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joseph.
Like you said, it reminded you of a story. And thinking back, I remember my father saying his first job at 7 years old was to deliver the bread to the upper apartments in these walk-up apartments. He said the young kids like him, 7, 8 years old, would ride on the wagon, and since they had the strong legs, their job was to take the bread upstairs. So that was the distribution end of things.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. By the way, we have another question, or at least a comment from a couple folks here. Susie, I often also look to Hipstamp to find items when I'm curating a collection for a gift or to fill in holes that I have in my own collections, like dragons or hummingbirds. Just another thought about where to find stuff. And then Diane Jarvis, Alan points out he has other food presentations. Alan, you're into food. You ought to open a restaurant, man.
I belong to a couple of food groups where we go to different ethnic restaurants every week.
Okay, I think you should invite the club over one night, pick up the bill. In any case, before we go here, from Diane Jarvis, in a stamp competition, has anyone ever won with a topical or thematic collection? I once was told that this is arts and crafts and has no place in a stamp show. I don't agree with this. What is the thinking here? Alan, maybe you should start with that. Maybe you've had some experience, but anybody else, including Vera, might want to, and Jean might want to.
Jean.
Alan, do you have anything you'd like to say?
ATA has their national topical show every year. That's part of the Great American Stamp Show. And there are a number of awards for topical or thematic. And most shows do have a somewhere between 1 and 15 topical exhibits that I see all the time. So there are competitions and there are awards, and it's part of stamp collecting, whether somebody poo-poos it or not.
Okay. Go ahead, Susie. Go ahead, Susie.
I don't mean to be so verbal, but from somebody who works with kids, my stamp club created crafts almost every meeting, and we gave them to the teachers, and these teachers 4 years later still have those crafts sitting on their desk, and they treasure them. And so when you think about how you want to promote stamp collecting, crafts and arts in stamps are, I believe, the most important part of our thing, and that's how we're going to keep this hobby alive.
You know, there's all those people that collect that Disney stuff. They wouldn't keep making them if nobody was buying them. And there are people that exhibit Disney.
Anybody else want to add any comments to this part of the conversation?
Two things
Go ahead,
real
Brian.
quick. If you want to know more about bread, look for an episode of The Food That Built America on the Discovery, I think it's on Discovery or History Channel, called Let Them Eat Cake. Like, that's a great show. Also, but yeah, I think the hobby's overall leadership snobbery towards topical collecting really needs to be brought down a notch, because I think you were right that the one of the big doors entry into new people collecting and building our hobby in a substantial way is through topical collecting. So the fact that leadership seems to think it's not worth exhibiting and therefore not worth doing is time has passed, way past.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because if we want to grab people into it, getting them to do, particularly young people, getting them to collect something that they're interested in is initially much more important, and maybe in the end, the only thing that's important to them, compared to collecting 200-year-old stamps with former presidents on them, which is what I like to do, but may not be of interest. We want to, anybody else, any other comments, questions, folks?
And Tone, maybe I'll just mention that, so like Brian said, I think topical collecting is a great way for younger people or anybody really to enter the hobby. And I know a lot of more advanced collectors that have, very traditional collections, but they have a topical collection on the side. I think almost everybody I know has some kind of topical collection that, just something that they're interested in through their job or through a hobby, another hobby that's not stamp collecting. And I'll just say that in terms of how far you can take topical and thematics, I think you can take it as far as you want. And you can actually, with exhibiting even, the wonderful thing about topical and thematic exhibiting is that you actually can include in your collection anything that you want from any of the disciplines in philately. So you can include covers, you can include stationery. You can include errors, varieties, like really anything that is considered like a traditional class of philately, you can incorporate those into a topical or thematic collection. And every collection is unique and you build it yourself. And there's no catalog that tells you when you're complete or whatever. It's, you know, so there's really a lot of potential and possibilities in topical and thematics. And, you know, you can get far. So I hate kind of boasting or whatever, but I have a thematic exhibit that has won the Grand Award at national shows in Canada. So, you know, thematic exhibiting, you can, like I said, you can take it as far as you want to take it. So I think the attitudes are changing, that, you know, it's not just considered necessarily like just for kids, or, you know, not that that's bad either.
Very good, Jean. Thank you. Susan, go ahead.
Even though I'm an adult, I do like to do arts and crafts. Everybody knows that this room and this table is my stamp room. This is where I put all the stamps that come in the mail that I need to go through my collection. Oh, you can't see it. Let's see. Maybe a little bit there, but I did a lampshade. My daughter loved it so much, she asked me for one for her apartment. And she does not collect stamps. And then last year, for our holiday party at our house, everybody got a door hanger so that their family would know that they were busy stamping. So, yeah, none of those stamps are worth anything that are on any one of those items, you know, but it helps put a little character into my space that I work on my hobby with. So just sharing.
Susan, very good. That's making it fun. A
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
I guess I got to figure out how to connect to my granddaughters this way. It's not working. Susie, go ahead again.
Okay, I'm just going to throw out a challenge to all 41 of you who are still on this call. I think the next time we do a call, everybody bring their favorite little thing that somebody created out of stamps. And we just all say, hey, look what we made. Because then you're going to see that it's not just about, you know, your albums or your value or your, oh, this is what I collect. It's just about the joy of collecting and how these beautiful little tiny pieces of art just can change lives. And like I said, I have kids that run up to me in my school right now that say, Mrs. Smelser, are you doing Stamp Club this year? And it makes me a little sad that I'm not, but I'm going to start it again. So again, just a challenge. I'm just thinking that would be a fun little topic for our pre-meeting challenge.
Yeah, we can sit there. You're right. We show up early. And by the way, we had people show up at 5 to 7 tonight, an hour and 5 minutes early. So we had by 7:30 a dozen folks. So anybody wants to show up early, we can share then. That would make sense. Vera, go ahead.
I'd just like to say to Diane that I think 15 or so years ago, you might have been right. I think topical collecting at that time was kind of the redheaded stepchild of our hobby. And topical collectors kind of tended to sweep it under the rug a little, and not everyone wanted to admit they were a topical collector, but a lot has changed. I mean, we have leadership in our whole hobby now that has at least started to recognize the importance that it really is a gateway to the hobby for everybody from very small children to elders. And if we don't support the topical side of collecting, that's one more kind of death knell for philately.
Thank you, Vera.
If anybody here belongs to the American Philatelic Society, the September issue of the American Philatelist was focused on topical and thematic collecting. And I think there's 4 articles in there that cover a broad spectrum of topical and thematic collecting. So it's worth checking out if you're interested.
That'll be good reading in anticipation of your presentation, Jean.
Yeah.
Which we're looking forward. I mean, it's got to be more interesting to us now more than ever. after tonight, so. Anyone else? I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I want to, first of all, thank Alan. What an intriguing and just exciting evening this was. So thank you, Alan. It was great. Paul Booth, one of our team members, is going to take us to the end of the show here. So Paul, go ahead.
Actually, before I do that, I think I saw somebody's hand raised.
Oh, excuse me, did I miss that?
I think it just came up like a second ago. I think it was Susan Schroeder.
It was me, and I hit that one instead of the applause.
Oh, okay.
But Paul, I appreciate Paul. Yeah, if she really did want to speak, I missed it. So thank you. Go ahead.
No
Paul.
worries. All right, Alan, let me thank you also. That was really interesting. I'm not a topical collector myself, but I've heard of Food on Stamps Gastronomy Society. Never saw anything this specific. So that was really interesting. Somebody could really make an extensive collection just based on bread. So we'll stay on for a few more minutes if anybody else thinks of another question or comment. But before people start logging off, I do want to mention a few things. I'm going to put a link to an evaluation in the chat window, or at least I'm going to try to see if I can get this to work. Looks like it did. All right, so please do fill out an evaluation. That helps us know that these kinds of events and programs are of interest to you. If you don't get to it this evening, that's fine. Anton will send it out again in a couple of days. But either way, whether you do it this evening or in the next few days, please fill out the evaluation so we'll know. If we're on track, meeting your needs, meeting your desires, and what you want to hear about. We do meet the third Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S. For next month on October 15th, Gene Wang, whom you've heard from a few times, going to talk to us about topical and thematic collecting. November 19th, Glenn Mitchell will talk to us about the stamps of New Zealand A to Z. And on December 17th, Charles Tacomo will share a presentation called Development of Perforations on U.S. Postage Stamps by Toppin, Carpenter, and Kessler and Company. And that's going to take us to the end of this year to begin 2025. We'll have a show and tell in January. Well, you'll have the chance to share some of your favorite items from your collections. So it's not too early to start thinking about what you'd like to share. And we'll have some details about exactly how that's going to work as we get a little closer to that date. And then finally, the operating team is working on a new feature of LASO where everyone will have the chance to share their knowledge and their experience. What we're going to do is we're going to compile a list of members who have some knowledge in different areas of philately that other people can ask questions from. You don't have to be an expert in anything, just have some knowledge and some experience. My personal opinion is that all of us, no matter what level of experience we have with philately, we all have something that we can share with somebody else. So we'll be sending out a questionnaire here in the near future, and please do consider participating in that program. Thank you again, all of you, for joining us this evening, and I'll turn it back to Anton and see if anybody has any final questions or comments they might have thought of.
Thank you, Paul, very much. Anybody, any final thoughts? Anybody? Alan, do you have anything you want to say?
No, just support your local clubs.
We hope so. It's actually, that's a great point because this is fun. I love it. But being at the local clubs, connecting more directly in all of our communities with the folks, that's really critical, really is. Folks, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. Appreciate it. And I can see now some people are been here virtually every meeting, and others are, this is the first time. We appreciate anybody who goes. Obviously, we all can't make every program, but as many as you can, please do come. We enjoy having you. Everybody, you take care. Have a great evening, and look forward to next month. Be good. Bye-bye.
Take care.